Dorothy Marie Robards was born on July 10th, 1976, to Stephen and Beth Robards in Texas. She went by the name Marie and was an only child. Her early years were relatively stable until her parents' marriage fell apart. When Marie was 4 years old, Stephen and Beth divorced. Marie went on to live with her mother. Beth met Frank Burroughs, a former Navy petty officer, while she was still married to Stephen. After the divorce was finalized, Beth married Frank when Marie was 4 years old. Frank had his own son from a previous relationship, though he had issues with the boy and eventually turned him out. This created a blended family situation, with Frank establishing strict rules about how the household would operate. By age 16, Marie had developed into a smart, studious student known for being quiet and well-behaved. She enjoyed an especially close relationship with her mother, Beth, who worked long hours as an emergency room nurse. People who knew them would describe their relationship as being like sisters rather than mother and daughter. They would stay up late at night talking, with Marie sharing stories about school and her social life. A court psychologist would later observe that when he saw them together, they were quite affectionate in an overt fashion, hugging one another frequently. Marie also had a close relationship with her stepfather, Frank, referring to him as Dad. However, those close to the family also described Marie as jealous and possessive over her mother. She viewed Frank as someone who had taken her mother away from her. Marie would see her biological father, Stephen Robards, only once or twice a month following the divorce. Stephen lived in the Fort Worth area and worked to maintain a relationship with his daughter despite the limited visitation schedule. During the summer of 1992, the weekend before her 16th birthday, Marie came home early to find Frank with another woman. She was furious. When she told her mother what she'd witnessed, Beth blamed herself rather than Frank. She worked long hours at the emergency room and argued that it probably made Frank feel neglected. She decided to stay with Frank and work on the marriage. Marie couldn't understand why her mother would choose to stay with a man who had cheated on her. From that moment on, Marie's behavior changed. She became sullen and withdrawn, especially toward Frank. She refused to listen to him and would talk back whenever he spoke to her. The tension in the house became unbearable. Finally, Marie went to her mother with an ultimatum. Either Beth divorced Frank or Marie couldn't live there anymore. She demanded that her mother choose between them. Beth stuck by her decision to stay with Frank. Instead, she arranged for Marie to go live with her parents, Marie's grandparents, in Fort Worth, Texas, approximately 45 minutes away. It seemed like a reasonable compromise that would give everyone some space to cool down. Marie lasted just 5 days. After less than a week, she arrived back at her mother's home, begging to move back in. She missed her mom. She wanted things to go back to the way they were. She promised she'd try harder with Frank. But Frank had established a firm rule in their blended family. In order to stop the children from moving from parent to parent whenever they didn't get their way, the rule was that once they moved out, they could never move back in. No exceptions. The rule existed to maintain stability and prevent manipulation. So the decision was made for Marie to live with her biological father, Stephen, back in Fort Worth. Stephen Robards was excited when he found out Marie was coming to live with him. He'd only seen his daughter once or twice a month for years, brief visits that never felt like enough time. Now he'd have her full time. He could be a real dad, involved in her daily life. He would take her out to restaurants and movies, trying to make up for lost time. He immediately applied for a 2-bedroom apartment in his complex so Marie could have her own room and some privacy. In the meantime, Marie slept on a rollaway bed in the dining room. Stephen's girlfriend, Sandra, also spent time at the apartment and tried to help Marie adjust to the new living situation. Marie, however, was not happy with the arrangements. She was on the phone with her mother every night. The conversations would go on for hours. She complained that her father never cleaned the apartment properly and didn't have enough utensils in the kitchen. She hated her new high school, Mansfield High School, where she didn't know anyone. She felt isolated and abandoned. Stephen's girlfriend, Sandra, could hear Marie through the walls, crying and begging Beth to take her back. At one point, Marie even wrote a letter to her mother threatening suicide if she couldn't come home. Beth read the letter and dismissed it as typical teenage drama, an overdramatic ploy to get her way. While attending Mansfield High School during the fall of 1992, Marie enrolled in a chemistry class. She was an excellent student who paid close attention and understood the material better than most of her classmates. The chemistry classroom had various chemicals stored on shelves for student experiments and demonstrations. Among these chemicals was barium acetate, a white crystalline powder. Barium acetate is a metallic element used to make rat poison, bleach, and other toxic substances. When ingested in sufficient quantities, it is extremely lethal. During one of these classes, when the teacher was distracted, Marie stole barium acetate from the classroom supplies. She poured some of the powder into a container and quickly tucked it into her bag without anyone noticing. In the chemistry classroom, there was a safety manual with individual pages for each chemical, listing safety precautions, toxicity amounts, and what to do in case of accidental poisoning. Marie found the page for barium acetate. She studied it carefully, learning exactly how dangerous the substance was and how much would be required to kill someone. Then she tore the page out of the manual and took it home with her. She needed to know how to handle the poison safely and ensure her own protection while using it. On February 17, 1993, approximately 1 week after stealing the poison, Marie put her plan into action. Stephen had dinner and then attended an evening church service, a Wednesday night routine he rarely missed. It was an ordinary evening. When he returned home, he told Sandra and Marie that he wasn't feeling well. He was suffering from severe stomach cramps. The pain was intense and getting worse. Earlier that day, Marie had prepared Mexican food for dinner. She had mixed the barium acetate into her father's portion of the meal. The spices in the Mexican food, particularly in the tacos, concealed the taste of the poison completely. Stephen had eaten the meal without noticing anything wrong. He had no idea his own daughter had poisoned him. After a few hours, Stephen's condition deteriorated rapidly. He went into a coma-like state. He was foaming at the mouth. His body was shutting down. Sandra, panicking and terrified, called 911. The paramedics arrived quickly and tried to resuscitate Stephen, working frantically to save his life. Throughout the entire ordeal, Marie stood by and watched. She never told Sandra about the poison. She never told the paramedics what she had done. She let them work on her father, knowing they had no chance of saving him because they didn't know what they were dealing with. By the time the ambulance got Stephen to the hospital, he was dead. He was 38 years old. His sudden death shocked his family. His father, Jim Robards, his mother, Patricia Botker, brother Clayton Robards, sister Stephanie Elder, and grandmother Alma Lebensky were all devastated by the loss. The Tarrant County Medical Examiner, Dr. Nazim Pirwani, performed an autopsy on Stephen Robards. The examination found that Stephen's heart was mildly enlarged and about 25% too heavy for a man his age. Based on these findings and the sudden nature of his death, the cause of death was determined to be cardiac arrest. Routine blood screening does not detect most poisons, and without any reason to suspect foul play, Dr. Pirwani reluctantly signed off on it as a natural death. The case was closed. Stephen's obituary appeared in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on Sunday, February 21, 1993. He was buried, his family mourned, and Marie had seemingly gotten away with murder. After her father's death, Beth told Marie at Stephen's funeral that she was finally leaving Frank. She had taken a job in Florida and had always planned for Marie to come with her. She had simply waited to tell Marie until that moment, wanting everything to be arranged first. Had Marie known this information just 1 week earlier, her father would still be alive. The entire motive for the murder, Marie's desperate need to get back to her mother, had been about to resolve itself naturally. Beth and Marie moved to Florida together. For a brief time, it seemed like Marie had finally gotten what she wanted. She was back with her mother. They could be close again. But the happiness didn't last long. Months later, Frank showed up in Florida, wanting to patch things up with Beth. He apologized for the affair. He promised things would be different. Against Marie's strong protests, Beth took him back. The pattern repeated itself. Only weeks after Frank moved in, Marie found a note on his pillow from another woman. Another affair. She showed it to her mother, furious and hurt once again. She told Beth, "Mom, you can put up with him if you want to, but I don't have to. I miss Texas, and I'm going home." Beth, recognizing that the situation wasn't working, arranged for Marie's grandparents in Fort Worth to take her in once again. Marie enrolled in yet another new high school, trying to get a fresh start. At this school, she met a girl named Stacy High. The two became close friends quickly. Marie seemed like she needed someone to talk to, someone who would understand her. Stacy became that person. They spent time together, studied together, and developed a genuine friendship. During their senior year, students in their English class were required to read Shakespeare's Hamlet. The play tells the story of a prince whose father is murdered by his uncle, Claudius. The themes of guilt, revenge, murder, and moral consequences run throughout the entire work. One day, Marie and Stacy were reading the play together. They came to Act 3, Scene 3, where the character Claudius delivers a soliloquy. In this scene, Claudius is alone, agonizing over his decision to repent for killing Hamlet's father. He wants forgiveness, but doesn't know if he can truly be forgiven for such a horrible crime. As Stacy read Claudius's words aloud, she noticed Marie starting to cry, not just a few tears. Marie broke down completely, sobbing. Stacy, concerned and confused, asked her what was wrong. Marie, through tears, asked Stacy a haunting question. Did she think people could go through life without a conscience? The question hung in the air. Stacy, now worried, asked Marie if she had a secret. Marie nodded, yes. Stacy started guessing, trying to figure out what could be bothering her friend so deeply. After a few attempts, Stacy asked the question that would change both their lives forever. Did you kill someone? Marie nodded her head yes, then she told Stacy everything. She confessed to the murder of her father. She explained that she had stolen barium acetate from the chemistry class at Mansfield High School while she was living with Stephen. She told Stacy that she had waited approximately 1 week before using it. Then she had mixed the poison into her father's Mexican food, knowing the spices would conceal the taste. She admitted that she had known exactly what the poison would do. She had wanted her father dead so she could go back to living with her mother. The poison had never been detected in the autopsy because nobody had been looking for it. Stacy sat there, stunned, listening to her best friend admit to murdering her own father. Marie made Stacy promise not to tell anyone. It was their secret now, just between them. Stacy agreed, sworn to secrecy, but the weight of that secret would nearly destroy her. For the next 8 months, Stacy High lived with the knowledge that her best friend was a murderer. The guilt ate away at her constantly. She couldn't sleep properly. She couldn't focus on anything else. The secret was crushing her from the inside out. At one point, the psychological pressure became so intense that she asked her mother if she could check into a psychiatric hospital for adolescents. She was falling apart but couldn't explain why. Eventually, Stacy broke down and confided in her mother about Marie's confession. She told her everything Marie had said about poisoning Stephen with barium acetate. However, Stacy's mother didn't believe it at first. She thought Marie had simply made up the story because she was so distraught over her father's death. Teenagers sometimes create elaborate fantasies to cope with trauma and loss. It seemed more likely than the alternative that a 16-year-old girl had actually murdered her own father in cold blood. But Stacy couldn't let it go. The burden was too heavy. She knew Marie was telling the truth. Finally, Stacy went to a school counselor and told her everything. She asked the counselor to call the police about Marie. The counselor took her seriously and contacted the Fort Worth Police Department. Now the police faced a significant challenge. They had a confession, but it was secondhand. They needed proof. In order to corroborate Stacy's story, the Fort Worth police would have to test Stephen Robards' blood for barium acetate. But Stephen had been dead for over a year. His body had been buried. The case had been closed as a natural death. Fortunately, the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office keeps tissue samples for up to 5 years after an autopsy is performed. By pure chance and fortunate timing, the police were able to obtain Stephen's preserved tissue samples just days before they were scheduled to be destroyed. If Stacy had waited even a week longer to come forward, the evidence would have been gone forever. Finding a laboratory capable of testing for barium acetate proved to be another obstacle. The testing requires specialized equipment that most facilities don't have. It took the Fort Worth police nearly 4 months to locate a lab with the proper equipment to perform the analysis. They finally found one all the way in Pennsylvania. The samples were sent, and then came another long wait. It took several more months before the results came back. During this extended waiting period, the 2 girls graduated from high school in the spring of 1994. Marie received $60,000 from her father's life insurance policy as his sole beneficiary. She used this money to enroll at the University of Texas in Austin with dreams of becoming a pathologist, a medical professional who examines dead bodies to determine the cause of death. the irony of her career choice was not lost on investigators. While waiting on the lab results from Pennsylvania, Fort Worth police conducted their own investigation to build their case. They went to Mansfield High School, to the chemistry classroom where Marie had been a student during the fall of 1992 and early 1993 while living with her father. There, on the shelves, they found barium acetate still stored among the other chemicals. They also found the safety manual that contained individual pages for each of the chemicals in the classroom. Each page listed safety precautions, toxicity amounts, and emergency procedures in case of accidental poisoning. The police went through the manual carefully. The page for barium acetate was missing. It had been torn out. When the test results finally came back from the Pennsylvania laboratory, they were shocking and definitive. Stephen Robards' preserved tissue samples showed he had 28 times the lethal amount of barium acetate in his body. Some reports indicated the levels were actually 250 times higher than what would normally be found in human blood. Either way, it was an absolutely massive dose of poison. There was no longer any question. Stephen Robards had been murdered. His death had been deliberate, calculated, and cold-blooded. In October 1994, more than 20 months after Stephen's death, Fort Worth police drove to Austin to arrest Marie Robards. She was 18 years old now, a college student with a bright future ahead of her. When police arrived at her apartment, Marie surrendered without incident. She was calm and cooperative. Once inside the police station, she very quickly confessed to what she had done. She admitted to stealing the barium acetate from her high school chemistry class. She confirmed that she had poisoned her father's food. She acknowledged that she had known it would kill him. Marie was released on bond shortly after her arrest. Using money from her father's life insurance policy, the same money she had received as a result of murdering him, she retained a pair of veteran defense attorneys to represent her. When asked by police and prosecutors about her motive, Marie stated she desperately wanted to live with her mother. "I just wanted to be with my mom so bad that I would do anything to be with her," she explained. Stephen's girlfriend, Sandra, described to investigators how Marie would be up late at night on the phone with her mother, crying and begging Beth to take her back. The phone calls would last for hours. Marie had been desperate, obsessed with returning to her mother. In a tragic and cruel twist of fate, the murder had been entirely in vain. Had Marie known the information her mother shared with her just 1 week earlier, before Marie poisoned Stephen, her father would still be alive. Marie had killed him for absolutely nothing. The problem she was trying to solve was already being solved. Despite her full confession to the police, Marie pleaded not guilty when her case went to trial. Her defense strategy was to argue that Marie didn't know the chemical would kill her father. Her attorneys claimed she had only wanted to make him sick, perhaps sick enough that she would be allowed to return to her mother's home. It was an accident, they argued. She didn't intend for him to die. However, this claim did not hold up under scrutiny during the trial. Marie was an excellent student, particularly in science classes. She understood chemistry. She was well aware of how lethal barium acetate was. The prosecution presented evidence that Marie had deliberately taken the page out of the school's chemical safety manual, the page that specifically detailed barium acetate's extreme toxicity and lethal dosage. She had taken that page so she could ensure her own safety while handling the poison and using it to murder her father. She knew exactly what she was doing. Additionally, the prosecution argued if Marie's goal had only been to make her father sick, that wouldn't have solved her problem. A sick father couldn't send her back to her mother. Only a dead father, whose apartment she could no longer live in, would force the issue. The prosecutors also emphasized that Marie had stood by as her father was dying in agony. She watched him go into a coma. She watched him foam at the mouth. She never told Sandra what was happening. She never told the paramedics who arrived and desperately tried to resuscitate Stephen. She never gave them any information that might have saved his life. She let him die, knowing they had no chance because they didn't know what poison they were dealing with. The defining moment of the trial came when Stacy High took the witness stand. Stacy testified that Marie had explicitly told her that she knew enough of that chemical would kill her father. Marie had confessed that she understood the lethality of the poison. She had known what would happen. Her best friend, the person Marie had trusted with her darkest secret, now stood in court and told the truth about what Marie had admitted. The jury heard directly from Stacy that Marie had full knowledge of what the poison would do and had used it intentionally to kill Stephen. Throughout the trial, Stephen's parents, Marie's grandparents, who had taken her into their home multiple times, defended her. They described her as a good girl who had simply made a mistake. They loved their granddaughter and couldn't reconcile the smart, quiet teenager they knew with the cold-blooded murderer being described in court. Beth, Marie's mother, also testified. She blamed herself for not telling Marie sooner about her plans to move them to Florida. "If I had only told Marie 1 week earlier, none of this would ever have happened," Beth said. The guilt she felt was overwhelming. If she had just communicated her plans, her ex-husband would still be alive. On May 9th, 1996, after only 1 hour of deliberation, the jury came back with its verdict: guilty on 1 count of first-degree murder. The jury had not been swayed by the defense's arguments. The evidence was too clear. The planning was too obvious. The intent was too transparent. At her sentencing hearing, Marie cried. She repeated over and over how sorry she was. She told the court she regretted what she had done. She was sentenced to 27 years in prison. From jail, Marie called her mother every night. The close bond they had shared, the relationship that had driven Marie to murder, remained intact, even through prison walls. In one of those phone calls, Marie told Beth that she hoped Stacy didn't feel bad about going to the police and testifying against her. She said she still liked Stacy. After all, Marie added, the two of them had once been best friends. She seemed to hold no grudge against the girl whose testimony had convicted her. Behind bars at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, Marie was considered a model inmate. She followed the rules, she stayed out of trouble. She even participated in numerous programs. In 2003, after serving 7 years of her 27-year sentence, Marie was released on parole at age 27. She married a man named Carl Strausch and is believed to be living under a new private identity, attempting to build a life far away from the crime that defined her teenage years. The tragedy of this case is that it didn't have to happen. If Beth had simply told Marie 1 week earlier about moving to Florida, Stephen would still be alive. Marie had killed her father for nothing. The problem she was trying to solve was already being solved. Now, more than 30 years later, a man is still dead, a family is still broken. And a woman who committed murder while she was barely old enough to drive is living somewhere under an assumed name, trying to forget the worst decision she ever made. If you made it all the way through this story, thank you for watching. If you found this case compelling, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on your notifications so you never miss a new video. Drop a comment below if you have thoughts on Marie's story or cases you think I should cover. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.